Mark Carney's astroturfed campaign continues. He's got a big group of people to meet him in Hamilton. Andrea Horvath's stomping ground. She's the mayor of Hamilton. And it doesn't look organic. It doesn't look natural at all, which is very interesting. Putin has just made the announcement just before I came on, just before I started the show, that they're going to resume usual diplomatic relations. So perhaps the Ukraine war is ending. So that's interesting. That's big news if that's true. I've got the video of Putin saying that, so that's interesting. EVs are not really viable, and the government is starting to realize that, so they're changing their edicts around sales, but not yet. They're just having internal documents reflect this reality that may have to change. So that's interesting. Update on the plane crash, who the carrier was and who the pilots were, potentially, who knows. Trade war is back on. So we have to start with that. The trade war is back on. And I thought we had weeks. I thought we had until March 4th. But yesterday, Justin Trudeau came out with a fiery speech talking about how he was going to put on a 25% tariff on $155 billion worth of U.S. imports starting today. And so, Trump will probably notice that, don't you think? I think so. So wild, right? Wild and crazy times here in Canada. We're going to see what's going on. And there are things that need to be taken into consideration when you have a trade war with your biggest trading partner and protector of the Arctic, the newly named North American Arctic region, right? So I don't know. It's one of those things where, sure, we could put up these giant tariffs and, poke Trump in the eye and claim a victory or something like that. But I'll say it again. We are already living. Did you notice that the United States is protecting our Arctic region, right? We're already living in the configuration of the 51st state. We're not financially able to stand on our own without the United States purchase of our goods. And if Trump wanted to onshore all of those building of those goods into the United States, he has the population, he has the resources to do it. And if that happened, it would take us 10 years to retool, to figure out how to, build a pipeline, right? And people aren't even really talking about building pipelines. They're talking about breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, but they're not being specific. And they're not being specific for a specific reason, because they have absolutely no intention of actually breaking down interprovincial trade barriers. I've made the case before that the two main ones are the pipeline to get off foreign oil and have our eastern provinces purchase refined product from Alberta. And so we need an Energy East pipeline. Quebec says no, that's not going to happen. We need to get off of supply management, and Quebec says no. So, we're stuck in a situation where the federal politicians are saying, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get off we're going to fix this structural problem with our country. And Quebec says no. And so we're stuck. There are no viable solutions, and it seems Trump knows it, and so he's going to act like it's true, and we're just going to be brought along for the ride. So it's about to get a little bumpy, I think. I think it's very, very concerning. David says, they announced this without a single question period. I guess this is what we always needed, just some dictator that nobody voted for to tell us the solution to our problems. Unreal, he says. Magnetic Norse says, Trudeau announces 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of U.S. imports starting tomorrow. This, of course, is in response to Trump's tariffs against our neighbors to the north. Here we go.
Perfume.
Oh, here is, back it up.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships. We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbors in the world. I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had.
So that's interesting. I cut him off there, but he's still not talking about any of the things that Donald Trump is really trying to address. And you can go back in history and say, oh, we've got such a long history together, blah, 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 blah. But it's the same thing as reminiscing about a great vacation when your mom's talking about, hey, clean up your room, dude. So it just doesn't address the situation at hand. Like, yeah, we had a great time on vacation. That has nothing to do with this ask. Like, get it done. And so I think that it's very interesting. Also, I think it's interesting that he's saying that it's in retaliation to U.S. tariffs, but I thought we had until the 4th. I know that the United States has put tariffs on steel, but does that mean that we retaliate with $155 billion worth of tariffs? And the steel tariffs were meant to stop the dumping of Chinese steel and subpar steel being put into the production pathway. So, or the, what's it called? The supply chain, that's it. Sorry, the word was right there. I knew it was right there. So it's interesting that Canada's, instead of saying, well, that's a legitimate thing, and of course we put out great steel, and we meet all these standards, we're responding with tariffs. I think that's what's going on. So, and we listened to enough of Trudeau, but I think that it was important going through all of the different levels of this is the tariffs, this is the timeline, 21 days, more, so on and so forth, the rationale, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, well, it's going to be impactful. I don't know how we expect to quote unquote win. I feel like Donald Trump is not necessarily maneuvering us into this situation, but it feels less like we're in control here and more like he's in control here. And so if we do this, it seems like the obvious next move. And so Trump will say, okay, checkbox, they've done that thing that I knew they were going to do, and now I'm going to counter, right? So it just seems like we're in the middle of a negotiation, and this is a very Trumpian negotiation, and we're not aware of where we're at with that, right? Here's Justin Trudeau, and this is a message to our American neighbors during the Invictus Games. The message was sent clearly, Justin Trudeau, when you said you were proud of Canadians when they all booed the national anthem. Canada's got another game against the United States. It's the championship game, so we're playing for the championship against the United States. Interesting, right? So will people redeem themselves and not boo this time? I'm not sure. But it's interesting because Justin Trudeau goes into the same kind of speech he was talking about in this video where he says, to the American people, this is going to hurt you. And I think it's interesting that he acknowledged that these actions are going to hurt the Canadian people. But this guy who's said he's going to resign real soon is fine with actioning all of this without any kind of question period, with a prorogued parliament, with MPs dropping like flies. Like, it just seems weird, right? It seems like, no, you shouldn't be doing any of this. And he says, oh, to our American friends and neighbors, it's not you we have the beef with, it's Donald Trump. Like, get bent, dude. And it's interesting again that Donald Trump's asks seem very reasonable and beneficial to Canadians. And the fact that Canada wants to instead enter a trade war, it puts up a red flag to me. It seems like there's more to this than it seems. It seems like the trade war is something the Liberals might want in order to claim an economic emergency to kick down the election another year, right? But it's not me making that up. We'll get to that in the next couple of tabs. But yeah, they want something like this to happen so they can declare an economic emergency and move forward with not having an election due to this economic emergency that needs to be responded to by the unelected central banker who's currently pilfering this prime minister's spot. Magnetic Norse is sharing this. Trudeau announces 25% tariffs. We've already seen this, but Derek says Governor Trudeau needs to sit down and shut up. And I think that's accurate. That's pretty right. Yep. Philip says, given the happenings, Canada may soon regret ignoring decades of warnings about its sovereignty in the Arctic. If the United States and Russia decide that they now determine what happens in the region and who gets to exploit it, we won't be able to do anything about it. Yep. And like, as I've said before, we are already in the configuration of the 51st state. We are unable to defend ourselves against Russia. We are unable to defend ourselves against 11 Chinese MPs that we've known about for, since 2023, March 2023. So we're unable to do this. And so Trump walks in, the United States walks in under Biden and starts defending the Arctic, and they change the name. And now all of a sudden it's going to happen. Well, if you want it to be not bumpy, it's going to happen over a period of time, and it's just going to be phased in, and you're not even going to notice, But if they want to fight about it, it's going to be bumpy for us, and it's going to seem like bigger changes in a shorter period of time, I think. So we'll see how this all plays out, but I don't think we have the leverage to stop it if Trump wants to push it. And if you think I'm wrong, okay. And if you think I'm being treasonous about this, I think I'm just trying to describe the situation we're in. Like, you're not rooting against the Maple Leafs if you say, oh my gosh, it looks like the three of the Boston players are on a breakaway. It's a 3-on-1 in the opposite, in the Leafs end zone. Oh my gosh. I actually play hockey, I play hockey. I don't actually play hockey. So yes, the three players are going to score a touchdown on the Maple Leafs. And so, right, you can see that. And I'm not being treasonous against the Maple Leafs by pointing this out, right? Obviously, I'm just saying, holy cow, this is the state of the game we're in. That's what's happening here. I'm saying, holy smoke, Canada's poor. We've gotten rid of all of our gold reserves. We've gotten rid of our military. We've gotten rid of our productivity. We've taxed ourselves to shit. We have done absolutely nothing to improve our position. We have bilked off the United States for years and got ourselves into this position, right? And now we want to be patriotic and we can stand on our own and we're gonna diversify. We're gonna ask Europe to buy our cars. Yeah, like, really? Serious? You want me to believe you? Okay, right? Like, sure. Probably what you're going to do is nothing, because that's what we've done up to now in the face of this threat. And it's always been a threat. And the leadership has treated it like Trudeau's treating it now. Like the U.S. needs us more than needs us more than we need them. And that just isn't true, right? End zone. Rex Glacier says, wow, $5 million spent to rent 2 helicopters for 8 weeks to use as background props for the Liberals. Love the fake SEAL Team 6 look to arrest illegals. RCMP says we have a strong border and we're making it stronger. Canada's new fentanyl czar Kevin Brosseau and Safety Canada Minister David McGuinty recently met with RCMP Ontario and Canada border officials to see some assets up close, including one of the RCMP's chartered Blackhawks. How many arrests have been made? Just off the top of your head. I haven't seen any. Big bust online, big bust of, people being arrested for being illegals and being deported from Canada. How many arrests have been made? I don't know. I've seen fentanyl busts, but I'm not sure that I've seen proper border arrests. I haven't seen, mass deportations or anything like that. So it is what it is, I guess, at this point in time. But if I was Trump and I was looking at this response, it seems kind of Mickey Mouse. It seems like people who are not serious about this, or who want to look like they're trying to be taken serious about this, but are also not doing the obvious things like, hey, clean up the kitchen, right? It's like, why are you sweeping the floor? Obviously, the dishes need to be put away, and in order for you to clean the dishes that are on the countertop here, and you need to put away the food that's on the table, on the oven, into containers, and then, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're doing the last thing first. What are you doing? Like, this is not the way to clean up the kitchen. It's the same thing, if you ask me, with regards to cleaning up the mess that we're tasked with cleaning up. It seems like they don't want to. And so it's obvious, right? If you're looking for specific things. Here's Rebel News reporting PM candidate hints Liberals could suspend election over Trump's trade war. Liberal MP Karina Gould says Ottawa could delay the next election if a U.S. trade war comes to fruition. That might be a reason not to go to the polls, she told reporters. Really? Really? We can go to the polls during a once in 100 years pandemic, but oh man, there's economic uncertainty, guys. Oh no, we can't go to the polls. We have to have this unelected banker figure things out. Seems weird, right? Here's Karina Gould talking about this.
With Trump threatening to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum on March 12th, your fellow leadership candidate, again, Chris Freeland, says it would not be ideal to go to the polls right after the party selects its new leader on March 9th. What do you think of this?
Look, I think we need to see where we are on March 9th. I think we need to understand what the situation with the United States is. If we are in a full-blown tariff war with the U.S., that might be a reason not to go to the polls. But we are also in a minority government, and so it's actually not just up to the government at the time. There would have to be an agreement with the opposition parties if we weren't to do that. But I think whatever decision we take has to be one that is responsible for Canadians. And one of the things I can say is that, you know, in Ontario, the Premier has decided to call an election at a time where, you know, his energy might be better spent defending Ontario's interests. And so I think Canadians will judge us as to what we decide to do, both as the governing party or as opposition parties, depending on where we are with Donald Trump and the threat to our economy.
They're all trying to frame Trump as the threat to the economy, when the threat is their socialist policies, their spending, et cetera, et cetera. So also the shade thrown at Doug Ford. Now, the election is kind of farcical. The NDP are a mess in Ontario. There isn't another Conservative party. I think the New Blue actually has candidates in every riding. The Ontario Party, I don't know if they have 10 candidates. Honestly, I don't know. I think they have 3 or 4. I've seen a couple of announcements. But there isn't, I don't think, a real viable Conservative party that's rising. You know what I mean? Like, during the BC election, it was clear that Rustad was going to win a lot of seats. I don't know that your average everyday Ontario knows who Jim Cariolis is or Derek Sloan. So I don't know, right? It doesn't seem like there's any kind of real opposition here. The NDP look like they're on track to maintain or lose a couple of seats. Doug Ford's going to get a big majority, even if he loses a couple of seats, and I don't see him losing a couple of seats. Bonnie Crombie, have people in Ontario forgiven the Liberals yet? I don't think so. So it just seems like it's a complete non-starter, period. Although Ford wants to win, and I think he's going to win, and have a mandate, quote mandate, to go through this trade war against Trump and play the strongman. And I think that that's wrongheaded. I think that we need people who are going to work with Trump, appoint a fentanyl czar because this one's crap. Say, we're not, like, maybe we'll work with the fentanyl czar when he bothers to come to Ontario, but while he's not in Ontario, here's my fentanyl czar and here's what he's going to do. And right, like, take the control away from Trudeau and actually try and solve the problems. But Doug Ford doesn't seem to want to do that. And so, right, he's been pushing that he is pro little man type deal, but at the same time, it's not a situation where he is actually putting those policies into place. One of the things that he promised before he was elected premier was that he was going to deal with the SOGI radical gender ideology in schools, and he never did. And so it's one of those things where fool me once, but he's a liberal. Doug Ford is a liberal through and through, right? So that's unfortunate. Moving on, we've got to talk about Mark Carney. Pierre Poilievre says sneaky Carney said in BC in English that he'll use the emergency federal powers to force provinces to accept big projects, like pushing out the election a year and stuff. Big projects like that, he means. Actually, he's implying pipelines, but he's not actually going to build pipelines. In French, he says he will not force projects onto unwilling provinces. So you've got both of these videos here. Links are in the description. I don't think we need to listen to him. There's a whole bunch of different videos that are highlighting this, different interviews, etc. And we've listened enough to Mark Carney. Melissa Lanceman is also taking Carney to task. She says Mark Carney tells an audience in BC that he would use emergency powers to force through resource projects against the will of provincial governments, and then tells Quebec media in French that he would never force through projects against the province's will. Which version is the truth? What would the emergency powers have been used for then? Sneaky, two-faced, just like Justin. I don't know about the just like Justin. I don't think it's sticky. Holly Doan says Mark Carney, as a federal advisor and prospective prime minister, should disclose assets, including his stock portfolio, debts, and income sources, the opposition said yesterday. So let's find out about this guy's finances before we hand over the finances of the country to this unelected globalist robber baron central banker, right? Alan says, and Alan's got like the Israeli flag and the Ukrainian flag and the Canadian flag. So he'll take what he says with a grain of salt. However, he says, there's no excuse for Carney not to do this unless, like so many liberals before him, he has something to hide. Things he'd rather voters not know about. Resistance to basic transparency always breeds suspicion. Interesting, right? Everybody's seeing this. It doesn't matter ideologically who you align with. Everybody's seeing this doesn't really make sense. And so he's responding to Tory's call on Carney to make ethics disclosure before Liberal leadership contest ends. So he'll whistle past the graveyard on this, hoping that nobody notices that people are asking for this, right? Oh, well, nobody asked, right? I don't have any power, Rosie, is what he said yesterday. Rebel News says Carney refuses to disclose wealth he acquired as Trudeau's advisor. Federal officials clarified that Mark Carney is not bound by the Conflict of Interest Act. That only applies to holders of public office, not advisors. So, shucks darn, Carney doesn't have to tell us anything, right? So here is CTV News. Mark Carney is trouncing Liberal leadership rivals at fundraising. I'm shocked. Here's me being shocked. How many people does Mark Carney know? How many central bank, high up people in central banks, fundraisers in central banks, people who, we have the whole budget to give. Oh, sure, we'll give it to Mark Carney's campaign. Like, I think obviously, and the blob as such, whoever that is, CCP, whoever it is, who knows who the blob is in Canada, but the blob wants Mark Carney, and the blob is moving fast to install him. So shocking that he's leading on fundraising. Could we see a transparent accounting of the fundraising? No? Oh, again, there's my shocked face. I'm sure there's some kind of transparent accounting, but Justin Trudeau had transparent accounting and nobody blinked twice when how much money came through Vancouver, right? All sorts of individual max donations through one riding in Vancouver, and everybody was like, oh yeah, everybody loves Papineau, right? Everybody loves donating to the Prime Minister in Papineau. So it's it was shady then, and it'll be shady now, and I'm sure that there's some kind of an accounting of it. And if you looked at it, your red flags would go off too. You'd be like, oh, well, obviously there's something here. Anyway, here's Mark Carney. Cosman says, can someone decipher what Mark Carney is saying for me, please? We're going to make the large polluters pay you for it, not the taxpayers, the large polluters. That's the smart way to do it because it makes it cheaper for the large polluters. What? Here's Mark Carney trying to convince the crowd that's paid to be there that it's worth it to stand there for the money. It's ridiculous though. He's not very clear. He's not charismatic. He's running on a change ticket, and there's no change that he's offering. He's offering, again, to tinker around the edges, but really he's taking the consumer carbon tax and he's just moving it up the supply chain to the producers. In the 90s, I think it was, when the GST came in, they used to have a hidden tax on importers and producers of things. And then they took that tax off, which reduced the price of whatever it was, ovens or whatever, and added it to the consumer. So instead of it being a hidden tax, now you get to know the government is screwing you right on your face, right on its face. There it is. The price would be $400, but because the government's screwing you, it's actually $460 or whatever it is. And so better, but it doesn't actually address the the trickling down, if you will, of that cost to the consumers. It doesn't matter where that cost is applied in the supply chain, you still have to pay it, right? And so Carney's making an argument that just sounds ridiculous and, again, is aimed at low information voters, but it doesn't matter. Our elections are rigged, and all they really have to do is put up a viable story where they can say, oh yeah, well, look, Carney, look at all the people who came out for Carney, right? Here we go. And so with that viable story, they can steal the election with impunity, and people who think, well, that's hinky, like there's something weird about this, will be shouted down as traitors, or will be shouted down as people who, are anti-Canadian, or whatever it is, whatever the new de facto insult is, right? I was surprised about anti-vaxxer, how that took off, but like they'll be able to make anything take off as long as you're being identified as an other, okay? Here's Mark Carney.
If you just axe the tax, you don't help our steel companies and our auto companies become more competitive in a world where we need new trading partners. So what we did is...
He thinks we need new trading partners? I think we need to stop being stupid and listen to what Donald Trump wants us to do and comply as best we can. Like, we need new trading partners? It seems... And who do you think is going to buy our cars? Europe? Who do you think is going to buy our oil? We can't get it to market.
We proposed is to, yes, axe the tax for individuals, for small businesses, for farms, for medium-sized businesses. It's going to be gone. I'm elected leader. And it'll be gone by April 1st, just to be clear. But we said, at the same time, we're going to make sure that our businesses can become more competitive. And at the same time, we're going to make sure every Canadian, if they want to make investments in insulating their homes or driving a more fuel-efficient car, reducing emissions, reducing costs otherwise, we're going to get the large polluters to pay you for it, not the taxpayers, the large polluters. That's the smart way to do it, because it actually makes it cheaper for the large polluters and better for all of you.
I don't think so. I don't think it does make it cheaper for the large polluters. It just offers another barrier to prevent anybody from getting into that field or that vertical without paying that tax. Like all of a sudden now you have to have these compliance checks and the rest, and it's just another layer. It's very anti-business, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody, really. Sean Newman breaks down Mark Carney, and he says this banker is about to control the 9th largest economy in the world, yet he's never won an election in his life, and he answers to global elites, not citizens. Here's what Canadians don't see coming. First, let's be clear about what's happening. Mark Carney is running for the Liberal Party leadership after Trudeau's resignation. Faux resignation? He hasn't resigned. He said he intended to resign. If he wins, he'll become prime minister in March without a single Canadian voting for him in a general election. But that's just the start. Carney has spent 13 years at Goldman Sachs, then became the governor of the Bank of Canada, then governor of the Bank of England. Now he sits on the World Economic Forum's Foundation board, helping share and shape their global agenda. Here's what should concern you. The WEF openly advocates for radical climate action, probably racial climate action too, radical climate action regardless of economic impact, a complete transformation of the global financial system, public-private partnerships that blur democratic accountability, and Carney is one of their key players. But even more troubling, Carney's climate finance initiative, GFANZ, is falling apart. What's GFANZ? The Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. A coalition Carney created to force banks and financial institutions to stop funding fossil fuels, except here's what happened. All major U.S. banks have withdrawn. JP Morgan Chase, the world's largest bank, led the exodus. Why? Because his climate policies were too extreme even for Wall Street. Wall Street wants to make money, and they were being forced into it. And Trump came in and unchained them, and they were like, F this, we're gone. So like it wasn't too extreme. They just became unchained from it. Before they had to comply. I don't think Wall Street's woke. They just want to make money. So, and I mean, like, if you can make money through woke, then they'll do that. But you can't make money through woke unless it's glee. Yet he wants to bring these same policies to Canada, Carney does. Here's what this means for Canadians. His climate plan would remove the consumer carbon tax, replace it with even stricter industrial regulations, push aggressive climate policies through the financial sector, all without voter input or parliamentary debate. This is how bankers think. Carney believes that private finances should drive climate policy, not elected officials, not Canadian citizens, not our democratic institutions, just unelected bankers and global organizations. This should worry every Canadian who values democracy. We're witnessing the potential handover of our democracy to someone who has never been elected, represents global banking interests, pushes policies that failed elsewhere and everywhere they've been tried, answers to international organizations. As a Western Canadian, I'm freaking out a bit. Our resource-based economy would be first on the chopping block. Our energy sector, the backbone of Western Canada, would be decimated. And all these decisions made by who? An unelected banker who answers to global organizations, not millions of Canadian families. I was thinking about this while I was shoveling the snow the other day. During my kitchen table talk over the weekend, I said, could it be plausible that somebody said, hey, listen, if we make it so nobody has to shovel snow anymore, look at all the good we'd do. Look at all the heart attacks we'd avoid. You know, people get heart attacks when they shovel snow. So look at all the heart attacks we'd avoid. And even more sinister, what if the goal was actually just to raise the temperature in Ontario to the point where heat pumps were viable and keep it there and force heat pumps through that, right? Like, we're going to change the weather to make money for the people who own heat pumps. And who owns heat pumps? Mark Carney. Mark Carney owns heat pumps, right? So like, these are the things. Maybe it's plausible. And somebody says, well, could we even do that? And somebody says, could we do that? And then yes, prove that they can. I don't know, man. I don't know. And then the only way you buy heat pumps is for the government forcing you or you know, having incentive programs to bring more people online with it, et cetera. Seems diabolical, right? Like a James Bond plot. But last few years, I mean, USAID is a James Bond plot. Like, we're going to hijack Social Security and be in control of the United States, right? Incredible. It's evil, right? Taking over the world stuff. Sean Newman continues. He says, this isn't just about politics anymore. It's about preserving Canadian democracy. We do not have a democracy in this country, and we don't have a republic. We don't have any kind of representative at this point in time who's really, truly trying to represent Canadians. Everybody's got stakeholders, from dairy cartels to foreign interests, Israel, CCP, and the rest. Khalistani, India, whatever it is, like, everybody's got some kind of ulterior motive. Everybody's like, I'm going to fight for you, but not really, right? Like, not really. I'm going to bilk the Canadian taxpayer for you is more accurate. So preserving Canadian democracy, we need a full reform of Canadian democracy. Preserving Canadian democracy, what does that even mean anymore? About protecting our right to choose our own future. We don't have that right now. About standing up to unelected elites who think they know better than citizens. Well, I mean, do you want to be tied up in court for the next decade? Thrown in jail like Tamara Lich and Pat King? Pat King's sentencing is today. Time to speak up is now before it's too late. Yeah, because they're going to pass C-63, and then you can't speak up anymore because they'll throw you in jail for that. Sean Newman continues, if you found this thread provoking, there you go, find him, and you can check him out if you're interested. Tom Quiggin says, this is from 2019. Financial Post is reporting Mark Carney and Michael Bloomberg's sustainable scheme to dismantle Canada's economy. They weakened us, and Trump is taking advantage of that situation in order to acquire us. And we're in the middle of that, which is why it feels so itchy. That's what's going on. That's the cold, hard reality of the situation. I don't know if Trump's going to be able to finish the job, but we're in process. If we're losers, we're on the sled, and we're going down that's that first part now. I think if we're on a roller coaster, I think we're going down the first drop, and we're realizing where exactly we are, because it's undeniable at this point. Right? So they weakened us, and Trump is taking that and using it to his advantage. Rebel News says Carney promises to balance the budget in 3 years. Where have I heard this before? After spending more money. I can't figure out, oh yeah, we'll have some deficits and then we'll come back to a balanced budget. Justin Trudeau made the promise in 2015, 2019, 2021. Mark Carney intends to borrow an unspecified amount over the next 3 years before promising to balance the budget. There will be a deficit, he says. So yay, how could we not vote for that? Shocking. Table Salt says new research has unearthed that Mark Carney's firm, Brookfield Asset Management, owned an Australian coal shipping port, the Bay Terminal, which supplied China with 5.8 million tons of dirty coal. I keep telling my friend we should start an oil company. Like, I want to start an oil company, a coal company. Let's start her up, buddy. Got to get in on the ground floor of these things, right? What's more ground floor than startup, right? If anybody knows how to start an oil company, let me know. Mark Carney says, Hamilton came out for change today. Are you kidding me? Look at all these people. This is astroturfing. Do you know what astroturfing is? Grassroots is like grass, like real grass. Like, oh, look at that. You can smell that grass. You're going to cut that grass. It smells like grass. AstroTurf is like pretend grass, right? It doesn't look like grass. It doesn't smell like grass, but it looks green. Looks green, I guess, and it's on a football field, right? So you could be like, okay, I could see how you'd want me to play on this like it was grass, but it's not grass. So this is astroturfing. And that's what's going on with Mark Carney's campaign. And this is in Hamilton. So how do you get a whole bunch of people out to Mark Carney's campaign? Well, you do it in a friendly city and you make sure that your political friends and assets all turn up, right? So these people are probably working right now, and they were told, working in your government buildings, and they were told, we're going to a Mark Carney event. Let's all go. It's easy to fill up a venue like that when you've got people who are being paid to go fill up the event on their work hours, right? Like, oh yeah, do you have to do any work? LOL. No, because they work for the government, right? So obviously they have time for this. Not everybody. I'm sure there are some people in the government who do work, but I have that guy from Parks and Recreation who thinks that the government is completely useless and should be completely abolished. The longer all of this nonsense goes on, the more my feelings align with his perspective. Melissa Lanceman again says, Carney's campaign admits muddled messaging on pipelines and spending cuts. This isn't muddled messaging. He got caught. Yeah, he's saying, oh, the muddled messaging, like the difference between the French and the English and all that, that's muddled messaging. Bullshit, right? He's lying and he's being caught out and he's pretending that, oh, muddled messaging is the reason for the lies, and it's not. He's just a lying liar. Chrystia Freeland it seems like Chrystia Freeland and all the rest are not actually making a big splash. But again, I'm not surprised by any of that because Mark Carney's a very deep state billionaire kind of guy who is being tapped to do this. It seems like he's been selected. So I'm not surprised that nobody else is making any kind of racket. Chrystia Freeland is got her bouncy hair, and Diana Murphy says the only takeaway here is how much she loves her bouncy hair. She's toast. Juno News says, formerly True North News, says, I'll let her say it. Here's Chrystia Freeland.
Most of the Liberal leadership contenders want to kind of drop the carbon tax now. You defended it for years, and now you'll dump it, I guess.
I was the first leadership candidate to say I would drop the carbon tax.
Right.
The very first one. And I think that got the ball rolling. And it was the right thing to do. For me, the message that we heard clearly, and actually we heard it first here in Atlantic Canada, was that Canadians recognize that climate change is real. They want climate action, but that a consumer-facing price on carbon was not working in their lives. And I think that it is really arrogant of a government not to listen to people. So I was glad to be the first person who said that I would drop it.
She froze people's bank accounts without charge, conviction, or trial or anything like that. Like, I think it's bad when governments don't listen to their people. Oh yeah, do you, Chrystia? Really? That's wild. Because not very long ago, you were gleefully freezing people's bank accounts. So that's super duper weird, right? Anyway, her campaign seems to be toast. Here's, what's her name? Karina Gould. And Concerned Canadian says, yeah, she's talking about how the Liberals could postpone the election, but we already looked at that Rebel News article. So that was National Post picking that up. But hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful